My name is Edward Roski, and as CEO at Intero, I've been helping companies plan for uncertainty for the last 25 years. Some are calling this the coronavirus recession. It's happening so quickly, some are calling it the flash recession, and some are predicting it will turn into the Great Depression 2.0 with even higher unemployment rates. All we know is there's going to be an impact. It's important to have the wisdom to know what we can change and what we just have to have the serenity to accept. While how long this economic dip will last is out of our control, and consumer spending patterns, unemployment rates, and credit lending are largely out of our control, and whatever the government decides to do or not do is definitely out of our control, it doesn't mean we can't take control. We just have to do something I call uncertainty planning. And there's a lot of uncertainty to plan for right now. There are a lot of terms, a lot of scenarios being tossed around. Which ones make the most sense? Which scenarios should you be planning for in a world where everything is up in the air? Bain says you should plan for 3 scenarios: missed plan, severe downturn, and liquidity crisis. McKinsey said 3 a couple weeks ago: quick recovery, global slowdown, and pandemic leading to recession. Now they're at 2 because a recession is obvious, so they're saying it's either a delayed recovery or a prolonged contraction that doesn't even begin recovering until Q2 of 2021. Morgan Stanley has their 3 scenarios, and Brookings is leading the pack right now with 7 different possible scenarios. But at the end of the day, most of the scenarios have a similar theme. The economy is going to dip at some speed. It may stay bad for some amount of time, and then it will rise up again. It could go through that whole process in 2 quarters, or it could take 2 years or longer. So I recommend you start by modeling 3 key scenarios. 1, quick recovery, 2, delayed recovery, and 3, prolonged contraction. The red curve is the quick recovery, the blue curve is the delayed recovery, and the green curve is the prolonged recovery. In the quick recovery scenario, we hit our peak of coronavirus cases in April, and the world gets back to spending by the end of June. It causes a decrease in revenue that is primarily limited to the second quarter of 2020, April to June. If it extends into July, August, it recovers enough that Q3 is still higher revenue than Q2. And by the end of September, we're back to where we were at the start of 2020. In this scenario, it's about short-term risk mitigation. We conserve on operating expenses, we stabilize our supply chain, and we plan to come out of this with immediate benefits. In the delayed recovery scenario, we don't hit our peak of coronavirus cases until summer, causing a decrease in consumer spending for 2 quarters. Essentially, we drop through September and then we recover over the 4th quarter this year and the 1st quarter of 2021. In this scenario, we have to take some aggressive strategies to drive revenue. At the same time, we have to know what our least profitable products, services, locations, and customers are so that we can, at least temporarily, suspend the things that are costing us money. In a delayed recovery scenario, layoffs are likely because it will take us a year to get back to normal. And now let's talk about the prolonged contraction. In a prolonged contraction, we either don't hit our peak until late in 2020 of cases, or it comes in waves as quarantines are enacted, lifted, people get infected, and then the quarantines have to be reenacted. This is also a possible scenario if it turns out there is no clear treatment and COVID-19 infection just becomes a way of life around the world. The scenario assumes more of a U-shaped recession. 2-quarter decrease, 2 quarters of bottoming out, then a much slower rise out of a recession lasting 4 quarters or more. Kind of looks like a bathtub. In this situation, we don't get back to where we are now until sometime in 2022. This scenario will require companies get back to the basics. They will have to stop doing, likely permanently, the things that are costing them money as they focus on their most profitable products and services, their most profitable locations, the 20% of their customers that bring them 80% of their profitability. What should we plan for in each scenario? Should plan the 5 levers that when pulled will affect 95% of your net income, 95% of what will keep you in business during the virus crisis. When in doubt, focus on the drivers of your liquidity. Units sold, well, that tells you your revenue. Your costs, both variable related to your units and your fixed costs, not directly related to your goods produced, but things you can modify, like corporate salaries and wages. Your revenue and expenses will drive your cash. Your access to working capital with your liquidity will tell you your solvency. How long are you going to stay in business if this scenario happened and you didn't do anything different? Pro tip, if a scenario says you're going to go out of business if you keep doing the same thing, do something different. For each of your scenarios, it's not important that you plan out right now by day or by week, unless you're in an industry that's having staffing or supply chain issues down to the day level, like grocery stores or hospitals. Assuming you're in this for the long haul, for each of the 3 scenarios, plan out by month for the next 6 months, and then beyond that, for right now at least, just plan out by quarter. It's more important that you develop these scenarios quickly and make them quick to update than that you get numbers down to the nth decimal. Now that you have your 3 scenarios at a high level, plan for different versions of these scenarios, essentially multiple what-if versions. Use scenarios to track the possible macro scenarios, then use versions to track different possibilities in each one of those scenarios. And importantly, the different actions that you could take in each one of those scenarios. So my example here, for example, for the quick recovery, I'm eliminating travel expenses for the entire scenario. But in one version, I'm furloughing 10% of employees. In another version, I'm furloughing 10% and laying off 5%. And in my third version, I'm laying off 15%, but I do see some gain in online revenue. Because I'm tweaking in each one of these how much revenue will go up or down and not just expenses for each scenario. On March 27th, an article in Harvard Business Review said that after the COVID crisis ends, there will be 2 categories of companies. The ones that don't do anything and just hope this doesn't happen again, and the ones who make investments in their future. Make sure that long term, you're one of the winners. Go to NRL.com/updates and stay up to date on all the information as it changes. This is Edward Roski with NRL Finance News. Stay safe out there.